She was a virgin secretary hiding her heart, and the billionaire CEO destroyed his own rules for her. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She never expected her silence to be her greatest strength. Kendra Hayes adjusted her black blazer one final time before stepping into the gleaming elevator of Meridian Tower, the 42nd floor. Executive level. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the numbers climbed higher, each ding marking another step toward a life she'd never imagined possible. At 25, she'd mastered the art of being invisible. Growing up in Atlanta's quiet suburbs, between her grandmother's worn Bible and towers of library books, she'd learned that the safest place was in the shadows. While her friends chased boys and parties, Kendra chose different battles: honor roll, church choir, and dreams that felt too big for her small world. Now, clutching her worn leather portfolio against her chest, she stood in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper, revealing a reception area that screamed power and money. Marble floors reflected the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the air itself seemed expensive. Ms. Hayes? A sharp-featured woman in designer heels approached, her smile professional but distant. "I'm Miranda Walsh, Mr. Cole's current assistant. He's expecting you." Kendra nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, but reality felt different, heavier. The click of Miranda's heels echoed as they walked down a corridor lined with abstract paintings that probably cost more than Kendra's entire education. "A few things before you meet him," Miranda said without looking back. "Mr. Cole values punctuality, discretion, and efficiency above all else. He doesn't engage in small talk. He doesn't tolerate mistakes. And most importantly," she paused at massive double doors made of dark wood, "he maintains strict professional boundaries. Always." The warning hung in the air like a challenge. Miranda knocked twice and pushed the doors open. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Hayes is here for the interview." The office beyond took Kendra's breath away. It was a corner suite with panoramic views of the city, but what struck her wasn't the luxury. It was the man behind the desk. Adrian Cole was younger than she'd expected. At 39, he possessed the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit impeccable, and when he looked up from his documents, his steel gray eyes seemed to see right through her carefully constructed armor. "Ms. Hayes." His voice was deep, controlled. He didn't smile, didn't stand, simply studied her with the intensity of someone accustomed to reading people like quarterly reports. "Please, sit." She moved to the chair across from his desk, her hands trembling slightly as she placed her portfolio on her lap. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken judgments. "Tell me why you want this position," he said finally, leaning back in his leather chair. Kendra had prepared for this question, but under his penetrating gaze, her rehearsed answers felt hollow. Instead, she found herself speaking from somewhere deeper. "I don't just want it, Mr. Cole, I need it." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I've spent my life being careful, being quiet, being safe, but safe doesn't pay student loans. Safe doesn't build a future. I may not have the pedigree of other candidates, but I have something else. I understand what it means to protect what matters most." Something flickered in his expression, surprise perhaps, or recognition. He leaned forward slightly, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "And what makes you think you can handle the pressure here? This isn't a small firm in Georgia, Ms. Hayes. This is Wall Street. The stakes are higher, the hours longer, the expectations." He paused, searching her face. "Unforgiving. I've been handling pressure my entire life," she replied quietly, "just not the kind that comes with a corner office." For the first time since she'd entered the room, Adrian Cole's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. It transformed his face completely, making him seem less like a corporate titan and more like a man who'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. "Miranda is leaving in 2 weeks to start her own consulting firm," he said, closing the folder in front of him. "The position requires complete discretion, absolute loyalty, and the ability to anticipate my needs before I voice them. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. The hours are unpredictable. The work is demanding, and I don't accept anything less than perfection." "I understand." He stood then, moving to the window that overlooked the bustling street below. With his back to her, he seemed less intimidating, more human. "There's something else you should know about working for me, Ms. Hayes. I keep my professional and personal lives completely separate. I don't form attachments to employees, and I don't tolerate those who can't maintain appropriate boundaries." The warning was clear, but as he turned to face her again, Kendra caught something in his eyes, a flicker of loneliness that he quickly masked with professional composure. "When can you start?" he asked. The question hit her like a lightning bolt. "You mean, congratulations, Ms. Hayes. Welcome to Meridian Corporation." As she walked back toward the elevator 20 minutes later, her signed contract tucked safely in her portfolio, Kendra couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped across a threshold she could never uncross. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that some rules were made to be broken. Have you ever felt like you were about to change your whole life with a single decision? Kendra just accepted a job that could transform everything. But is she prepared to break her own rules for a man who promises never to get involved with employees? What would you do in her place? Follow your heart or play it safe? The coffee maker in her tiny Brooklyn apartment had been broken for 3 days, but Kendra didn't care. She was too nervous to eat or drink anything anyway. Her first morning at Meridian Corporation began at 5:47 a.m., staring at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror of her studio apartment. The black pencil skirt and white blouse looked professional enough, but would they see through her carefully constructed facade? Would they realize she was just a girl from Atlanta playing dress-up in a world of titans? The subway ride into Manhattan felt like a descent into another universe. Around her, seasoned professionals scrolled through phones, their faces masks of confident boredom. Kendra gripped her purse tighter, feeling the weight of her grandmother's Bible tucked inside, a small piece of home in this concrete jungle. By 7:15 a.m., she was standing outside Meridian Tower, watching early risers stream through the revolving doors. Taking a deep breath, she joined the flow. "You look terrified," came a warm voice behind her in the elevator. Kendra turned to find a woman about her age with kind brown eyes and an infectious smile. Unlike the other polished professionals, this woman wore scrubs under her jacket. "Is it that obvious?" Kendra managed a nervous laugh. "Only to someone who remembers their first day. I'm Delilah Morrison. I work at the medical clinic on the 15th floor. Dr. Caldwell keeps all the corporate big shots healthy and sane." She grinned. "Well, healthy anyway. The sane part might be asking too much." The elevator dinged at the 15th floor. "Good luck up there," Delilah said with a wink. "And remember, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like us." When Kendra reached the 42nd floor, Miranda was waiting with a stack of files and what looked like a 20-page instruction manual. "You're 7 minutes early, good." Miranda's efficiency was both impressive and intimidating. Mr. Cole arrives at exactly 8:01 a.m. His coffee, black Colombian from the machine in the break room, never the office pot, should be on his desk at 8:01. His schedule is blocked in 15-minute increments, and every meeting has a purpose. He doesn't do lunch meetings on Tuesdays, never takes calls during his 3 p.m. review hour, and absolutely despises when people waste his time with unnecessary pleasantries. Kendra scribbled notes, her hand cramping from writing so fast. "One more thing," Miranda said, lowering her voice. "See that woman over there?" She nodded toward a striking blonde examining her manicure at the reception desk. "That's Celeste Fairmont. She's been trying to get Mr. Cole's attention for months. Calls herself a business consultant, but we all know what she's really consulting on. Don't let her pass the reception area without an appointment." At exactly 7:58 a.m., the elevator doors opened, and Adrian Cole stepped out. Even from across the office, Kendra felt the shift in energy. Conversations quieted, postures straightened, and the very air seemed to hold its breath. He moved with purpose, his stride confident but unhurried. When his eyes swept the reception area, they paused on Kendra for just a moment, long enough for her to catch a flicker of something she couldn't quite identify. "Ms. Hayes," his voice carried across the space. "My office, 5 minutes." Her heart hammered as she gathered his coffee and the morning briefing folder Miranda had prepared. When she knocked on his office door, his enter was crisp and professional. "Your coffee, Mr. Cole," she said, placing the mug on his desk with steady hands. He glanced up from his computer screen, and for a moment, the corporate mask slipped. His eyes seemed to really see her, not just as an employee but as a person. The moment stretched between them, loaded with unspoken questions. "Tell me about yourself, Ms. Hayes," he said suddenly, leaning back in his chair. The real version, not the interview answer. The request caught her off guard. "Sir, I've read your resume. Graduated summa cum laude from Emory University, Dean's List every semester, part-time job since you were 16. But that's just data. I want to know who you are." Kendra hesitated. In her experience, showing too much of herself had always led to disappointment, but something in his tone, curious rather than demanding, made her want to try honesty. "I'm someone who believes in earning what she gets," she said quietly. "I grew up with my grandmother after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. She taught me that dignity isn't about how much money you have, it's about how you carry yourself when nobody's watching." Adrian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "And when people are watching? Then you make sure they see exactly what you want them to see." A ghost of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "That's a skill most people spend decades learning. You seem to have mastered it early. Sometimes you don't have a choice." The honesty of her response seemed to surprise them both. Adrian set down his coffee and studied her with those penetrating grey eyes. "Miranda mentioned you have no family in New York. That must be difficult." "It's quiet," Kendra admitted. "But quiet isn't always bad." "No," he said softly, "it isn't." The intercom buzzed, breaking the spell. "Mr. Cole? Your 8:30 is here." "Thank you, Ms. Hayes. We'll continue this later." As Kendra closed the door behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in that brief exchange. Adrian Cole wasn't just her boss, he was a man with his own carefully guarded secrets. The morning flew by in a blur of phone calls, appointment scheduling, and crash courses in corporate protocol. By lunch, Kendra's head was spinning, but she was keeping up. "You're doing well," Miranda said during a brief break. "Better than my last 3 replacements combined." "What happened to them?" Miranda's smile turned cryptic. "Let's just say, not everyone can handle Mr. Cole's intensity." As if summoned by his name, Adrian emerged from his office, checking his watch. "Ms. Hayes, I have a client dinner tonight. I'll need you to prepare the Blackstone Industries file and coordinate with their legal team for tomorrow's meeting." "Of course, Mr. Cole." He paused at her desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly masculine. "And Ms. Hayes, thank you for this morning. It's been refreshing to have an honest conversation." After he left, Kendra sat staring at her computer screen, her pulse racing. She'd come here to build a career, to finally step out of the shadows and claim her place in the world. But as the afternoon sun slanted through the office windows, she realized she might be stepping into something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The storm hit Manhattan at 6:47 p.m., turning the city streets into rivers of frustrated commuters and honking taxis. Kendra stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Adrian's office, watching lightning illuminate the skyline. Most of the staff had left hours ago, but she'd volunteered to stay late, finalizing the Blackstone presentation that would determine whether Meridian Corporation secured their biggest client of the year. Still here, she turned to find Adrian in the doorway, his tie loosened and his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. Without his corporate armor of crisp suits and commanding presence, he looked almost human. "The numbers weren't adding up in the Henderson projections," she said, gesturing toward the spreadsheets covering his desk. "I found the discrepancy. Someone transposed the quarterly figures in section 4. He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Show me." As she leaned over the desk to point out the error, she became hyper-aware of his proximity. He smelled like expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine, something that made her pulse quicken, despite every rational thought screaming at her to maintain professional distance. "There," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "The difference is nearly $2 million, enough to lose the contract if they'd caught it." Adrian studied the documents, then looked at her with something approaching amazement. "Miranda missed this. Hell, I missed this." "How did you catch what trained financial analysts couldn't?" Kendra felt heat rise in her cheeks. "My grandmother used to balance 5 different church budgets. She taught me that numbers tell stories, and when the story doesn't make sense, you dig deeper until it does. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was." The words came out softer than she intended. "She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a vulnerability that cracked through his professional facade like lightning through the storm clouds outside. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Losing the person who raised you. I understand that pain more than you might expect." Before she could ask what he meant, thunder crashed overhead and the lights flickered. In the momentary darkness, she saw him differently, not as the untouchable CEO, but as a man who carried his own hidden wounds. "The subway's probably flooded by now," he said, moving to check his phone. "How are you planning to get home?" "I'll figure it out. Maybe wait it out in the lobby until—" "Absolutely not." The authority in his voice was absolute. I'll have my driver take you home. Mr. Cole, I can't accept. It's Adrian, he said, and the use of his first name felt like an intimate secret shared between them. And it's not a request. 20 minutes later, they sat in the back of his black sedan, the city lights blurring through rain-streaked windows. The driver, a quiet man named Vincent, who'd apparently worked for Adrian for years, navigated the flooded streets with practiced ease. "Tell me something else about your grandmother," Adrian said suddenly, his voice low enough that Vincent couldn't overhear. Kendra glanced at him, surprised by the personal request. In the dim light of the car, his features seemed softer, more approachable. "She used to say that silence was a gift, that most people talk too much and listen too little." Kendra smiled at the memory. "She'd sit on the porch every evening, just watching the world go by. I thought she was lonely, but she told me she was learning. People show you who they really are when they think nobody's watching," she'd say. "Smart woman." Adrian's voice held a note of genuine admiration. "What else did she teach you?" "That some things are worth waiting for, that rushing into something just because everyone else is doing it doesn't make it right." She paused, then added quietly, "that the most precious gifts are the ones you choose to give, not the ones you're pressured to surrender." Adrian turned to study her profile, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. "That's an unusual philosophy for someone your age." "Maybe, but it served me well so far." "And what are you waiting for, Kendra?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications she wasn't sure she was ready to explore. When she finally met his gaze, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Curiosity mixed with something deeper, more dangerous. "Someone worth waiting for," she whispered. The car pulled up outside her modest Brooklyn apartment building, and Adrian looked through the window at the narrow street, lined with fire escapes and corner bodegas. "This is where you live?" His tone wasn't judgmental, just surprised. Kendra felt a familiar shame creep up her spine, the same feeling she'd carried throughout college, being surrounded by classmates who treated money like water. "It's not much, but it's mine," she said, reaching for the door handle. "Kendra," his hand covered hers, stopping her. The contact sent electricity through her entire nervous system. "I didn't mean, I was just thinking that someone who catches million-dollar errors and speaks 3 languages shouldn't have to live in..." He gestured vaguely at the building. "Mr. Cole..." "Adrian," he corrected softly. "Adrian," she repeated, and his name felt dangerous on her tongue. "I'm not ashamed of where I come from. My grandmother taught me that a person's worth isn't measured by their address." "She's right." His thumb traced across her knuckles, and she wondered if he realized he was still holding her hand. "But sometimes I think the world would be a better place if more people had your grandmother's wisdom." "What about your family?" she asked impulsively. "What did they teach you?" Adrian's hand stiffened against hers, and she immediately regretted the question. "They taught me that love is a liability," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "That emotional attachments make you weak, that the only person you can truly depend on is yourself." "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. "But lonely is safe." Lightning illuminated the car interior, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Kendra felt the pull between them like gravity, inevitable and terrifying. "I should go," she whispered, but made no move toward the door. "Yes," he agreed, but his grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly. "You should." Finally, she forced herself to pull away, the loss of contact like a physical ache. "Thank you for the ride." "Kendra?" She turned back, rain already beginning to soak through her thin jacket. "Be careful, walking alone at night. This neighborhood..." He seemed to struggle with something, then said simply, "Just be careful." As his car disappeared into the storm, Kendra stood on the sidewalk, letting the rain wash over her. She'd come to New York to build a career, to finally step out of the shadows of her careful, protected life. But standing there in the storm, she realized that Adrian Cole might be the most dangerous shadow she'd ever encountered. The coffee burned her tongue, but Kendra barely noticed. She'd been distracted all morning, replaying every moment from last night's car ride. Earth to Kendra. Delilah's voice cut through her daydreaming. They sat in the building's small cafeteria during lunch break, surrounded by the low hum of corporate small talk. "You look like someone who got caught in yesterday's storm and hasn't quite dried off yet." "Just tired," Kendra lied, stabbing at her salad without appetite. "Uh-huh." Delilah raised an eyebrow. "And I'm just a part-time brain surgeon. Come on, spill. What's got you looking like you've seen a ghost?" Before Kendra could deflect again, a familiar voice cut through the cafeteria noise. "Well, well, if it isn't the new flavor of the month. Both women looked up to see Celeste Fairmont approaching their table, her designer heels clicking against the linoleum with predatory precision. Up close, she was even more striking, the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive stylists and unlimited bank accounts. "Excuse me?" Kendra's voice remained steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. "Oh, don't play innocent, sweetie." Celeste's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Word travels fast in this building. Adrian Cole giving personal rides to secretaries. That's front-page gossip material." Delilah started to stand, but Kendra placed a gentle hand on her arm. "It was raining," she said calmly. "He offered me a ride home. That's all." "Of course it was." Celeste's laugh was musical and venomous. "Just like it was just business when he spent 3 hours in his office with you yesterday. Doors closed. Very intimate." Heat flooded Kendra's cheeks, but she kept her voice level. "We were working on the Blackstone presentation." "I'm sure you were working on something." Celeste leaned closer, her perfume cloying and overwhelming. "But here's some free advice, country girl. Men like Adrian don't date down. They might play with their toys for a while, but they always come back to their own kind eventually." The words hit like physical blows, each one designed to find the tender spots of Kendra's insecurities. But before she could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Miss Fairmont." All three women turned to see Adrian standing behind Celeste, his expression thunderous. He wore a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, but it was the ice in his grey eyes that commanded attention. "Mr. Cole." Celeste's entire demeanor shifted, her voice becoming breathy and flirtatious. "I was just getting acquainted with your new assistant. I heard." His tone could have frozen hell itself. "And now you can leave." "Adrian, Now." The single word carried such authority that Celeste actually took a step back. Her composure cracked for just a moment, revealing something ugly and desperate beneath her polished exterior. "This isn't over," she hissed at Kendra, before clicking away on her expensive heels. An uncomfortable silence settled over their corner of the cafeteria. Kendra stared at her untouched salad, mortified that Adrian had witnessed the confrontation. "Ms. Hayes," he said quietly, "my office, please." The walk to the elevator felt like a death march. Kendra was acutely aware of the curious stares from other employees, the whispered conversations that followed in their wake. By the time they reached his office, her hands were trembling. Adrian closed the door behind them and moved to the windows overlooking the city. For a long moment he said nothing, just stood with his hands clasped behind his back, tension radiating from every line of his body. "I apologize for Ms. Fairmont's behavior," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "You don't need to apologize for someone else's actions." He turned to face her, and she was surprised by the vulnerability she saw in his expression. "Don't I? She targeted you because of me, because of last night." "What about last night?" The question came out more breathlessly than she intended. Adrian moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes. "You know what about last night, Kendra? The question is, what we're going to do about it." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't understand." "Yes, you do." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You felt it too. In the car, the way the air changed when I touched your hand." She wanted to deny it, to retreat behind the safety of professional boundaries, but standing here in his office with the afternoon sun casting golden light across his features, she found herself incapable of lies. "Mr. Cole, Adrian." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne again, that intoxicating mixture that made her thoughts scatter like leaves in a hurricane. "Say my name, Kendra." "Adrian," she whispered, and the sound seemed to break something inside him. "This is dangerous territory," he said, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "I have rules, boundaries. I don't get involved with employees." "Then don't." The words came out stronger than she felt, and Adrian's eyes darkened with something that made her pulse race. "You think it's that simple?" He reached up, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it sent electricity through her entire nervous system. "You think I can just pretend I don't notice the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, or how your eyes light up when you laugh with that nurse friend of yours?" "You've been watching me," she realized, the revelation both thrilling and terrifying. "Every day since you walked into this office." His thumb traced along her jawline, and she found herself leaning into the touch despite every rational thought screaming at her to pull away. "You're breaking down walls I've spent years building, Kendra, and I don't know what to do about it. Maybe," she started, then stopped, afraid to voice the thought that had been growing in her heart. "Maybe what?" Maybe some walls are meant to be broken. Adrian's hand stilled against her face, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. The air between them crackled with tension, thick with possibilities and unspoken desires. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the spell. He stepped back abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "The Blackstone meeting is in an hour," he said, his professional mask sliding back into place. "We need to review the final numbers." Kendra nodded, struggling to catch her breath. Of course. But as they settled into the familiar routine of work, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them. They were standing on the edge of a precipice, and one wrong step would send them both tumbling into territory neither of them knew how to navigate. The real question was, did she have the courage to jump? The Blackstone meeting had been a triumph, but Kendra couldn't focus on the victory. Not when Adrian's words from earlier kept echoing in her mind like a prayer she was afraid to believe. At 9 p.m., the office had emptied except for the cleaning crew and the soft glow emanating from Adrian's corner office. Kendra sat at her desk, pretending to organize files while stealing glances at his silhouette through the frosted glass. He'd been unusually quiet since the meeting ended, retreating behind his professional mask so completely that she wondered if she'd imagined their earlier moment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Delilah. "Girl, you left your sweater in the cafeteria. Security is holding it. Also, whatever's happening with you and Mr. Tall, Dark and Brooding, be careful. The good ones are always the most dangerous." Kendra smiled despite her nerves. Even Delilah could sense the shift in the air around them. "Kendra?" Adrian's voice carried from his office, and she felt her pulse quicken at the sound of her name on his lips. She found him standing by his bookshelf, holding a crystal tumbler with amber liquid. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms that made her mouth go dry. "You don't have to stay this late," he said without turning around. "The presentation was perfect. Blackstone signed the contract." "I know, She struggled to find words that wouldn't reveal too much. "I wanted to make sure everything was filed properly." Adrian turned then, and she saw something raw in his expression, a vulnerability that made her heart ache. "That's not why you're still here, is it?" he asked quietly. "No," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not." He set down his glass and moved closer, each step deliberate and measured. "Then why?" The honest answer would change everything between them, would cross a line they could never uncross. But looking into his eyes, Kendra realized she was tired of hiding behind safe walls. "Because I can't stop thinking about what you said earlier, about breaking down walls." "Kendra." Her name sounded like a warning and a prayer combined. "I've spent my whole life being careful," she continued, her courage building with each word, "choosing the safe path, the quiet path, but you make me want to be brave." Adrian closed the remaining distance between them, stopping just inches away. "You are brave. Do you have any idea how extraordinary you are?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "Don't." His finger touched her lips, silencing her protest. "Don't diminish yourself. Not to me, never to me." The tenderness in his voice nearly undid her. "Adrian, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She took a shaky breath, knowing that once she spoke these words, there would be no taking them back. I don't have experience with." She struggled, feeling foolish and naive. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked almost like reverence. "You've never been with anyone." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway, unable to meet his gaze. "I know that probably sounds pathetic to someone like you." "Someone like me?" Adrian's hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Kendra, do you know what I see when I look at you?" She shook her head, transfixed by the intensity in his grey eyes. "I see a woman who knows her own worth, who doesn't give pieces of herself away carelessly. I see strength disguised as gentleness, wisdom beyond her years." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I see everything I never knew I was looking for." Tears pricked at her eyes. "You don't understand. I don't know how to be what someone like you needs." "And what do you think I need?" "Someone sophisticated, experienced, someone who belongs in your world." Adrian's laugh was soft and self-deprecating. "My world is cold, Kendra, full of people who would sell their souls for the right price. Do you want to know what I really need?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I need someone real, someone who sees me as more than a bank account or a business opportunity." His forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling in the space between. "I need someone who makes me remember what it feels like to be human." "Adrian." She whispered his name like a confession. "I know this is complicated," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm your boss. There are rules, protocols." Hell, there's probably a dozen reasons why this is a terrible idea. Then why does it feel so right? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger in equal measure. Adrian's hands slid from her face to her shoulders, his touch burning through the fabric of her blouse. Because some things transcend logic, he said finally. Some connections are too powerful to ignore, no matter how inconvenient they might be. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've spent 15 years building walls to protect myself from exactly this kind of vulnerability, and you've managed to demolish them all in less than 2 weeks. He pulled back slightly, searching her eyes. I'm saying that I'm falling for you, Kendra Hayes, and it terrifies me more than any hostile takeover ever could. Her heart soared at his confession, but fear quickly followed. What happens now? I don't know, he admitted. I've never been in uncharted territory like this before. All I know is that I can't pretend this isn't happening anymore. Neither can I. They stood there in the dim office light, surrounded by the silence of the empty building. The city sparkled beyond the windows, but Kendra felt like they were the only two people in the world. I should take you home, Adrian said finally, though he made no move to step away. Should, she repeated, a small smile playing at her lips. But not want to. Want is a dangerous word around you, he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper that sent shivers down her spine. Maybe I like dangerous. Adrian's eyes darkened. Careful, Kendra. You're playing with fire. Maybe I'm ready to get burned. The words seemed to break the last of his restraint. His hand tangled in her hair, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. This changes everything, he whispered against her ear, his breath sending electricity through her entire body. I know, she breathed back. There's no going back once we cross this line. I don't want to go back. And as the city lights twinkled beyond the windows, Kendra realized she meant it. Whatever came next, whatever complications and challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. She was ready to stop being invisible. The restaurant was the kind of place that whispered money instead of shouting it. Dim lighting, tables spaced for private conversations, and a wine list that cost more than Kendra's monthly rent. You didn't have to bring me somewhere, so... She gestured at the crystal stemware and linen napkins. Extravagant. Adrian's smile was soft in the candlelight. I wanted to do this properly. Take you on a real date, not just stolen moments in my office. It had been 3 days since their confession, 3 days of careful professionalism during work hours and increasingly heated text messages after. Adrian had insisted on maintaining appearances at the office, but the tension between them had become almost unbearable. Besides, he continued, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his, I like seeing you in candlelight. Heat flooded her cheeks. She'd chosen her one good dress, a simple black number that Delilah had helped her pick out during an emergency shopping trip that morning. Tell me something I don't know about you, Adrian said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. What do you want to know? Everything. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. Your dreams, your fears. What makes you laugh when nobody's watching? Kendra took a sip of wine, gathering courage. I used to want to be a teacher. Elementary school. I love the way kids see the world. Everything is possible until adults convince them otherwise. Why didn't you pursue it? Reality, she said simply. Teachers don't make enough to pay off student loans and support themselves in New York. Dreams are expensive. Adrian's expression darkened. The world has a way of punishing people for having beautiful dreams. What about you? She asked, sensing pain beneath his words. What did you dream about before you became the Adrian Cole? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I loved animals. They never lied, never betrayed you for personal gain. His smile was bitter. My father called it a waste of intelligence, said the Cole name was meant for boardrooms, not barnyards. Your father sounds like a piece of work. He was a bastard, Adrian said matter-of-factly. But he was right about one thing. Sentiment is a luxury successful people can't afford. You don't believe that. I did, for a very long time. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles that made her heart race, until I met a certain secretary who made me remember what it felt like to care about something more than quarterly profits. The waiter appeared to refill their wine glasses, breaking the spell momentarily. When they were alone again, Adrian's demeanor had shifted. There was something urgent in his expression. Kendra, I need you to know something about me, about my past. Dread pooled in her stomach. What is it? I haven't always been careful with people's feelings. There have been women who thought they meant more to me than they did. I've hurt people because I was too selfish to be honest about my limitations. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different. His grip on her hand tightened. Because what I feel for you scares the hell out of me. And I need you to understand that if we do this, if we cross this line, I'm all in. No games, no casual anything. I don't think I'm capable of treating you like just another conquest. Good, she said quietly, because I wouldn't survive being just another conquest. Adrian studied her face in the flickering candlelight. Are you sure about this? About us? Because once we go down this path, I don't know if I'll be able to let you go. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent a thrill through her entire body. I'm sure, she whispered. He signaled for the check without breaking eye contact. Then let's get out of here. The drive to his penthouse was filled with electric silence. Kendra's heart hammered as the elevator climbed to the top floor, her reflection in the polished steel doors, showing a woman she barely recognized, flushed, breathless, alive with anticipation. Adrian's apartment was stunning, but somehow cold, all clean lines and expensive furniture that looked like it had never been truly lived in. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. It's beautiful, she said, though something about the perfection made her sad. It's empty, Adrian corrected, coming to stand behind her at the windows. His hands settled on her shoulders, his breath warm against her ear. I never noticed before you walked into my life. Now all I can see is how lonely it is. She turned in his arms, searching his face. You don't have to be lonely anymore. Kendra. Her name was a prayer on his lips as he cupped her face in his hands. I need you to know that whatever happens tonight, you're in control. We go at your pace, and if you want to stop at any point— I won't want to stop, she interrupted, rising on her toes to brush her lips against his. I trust you. The kiss that followed was different from their tentative touches in the office. This one was hungry, desperate, full of weeks of suppressed longing. Adrian's hands tangled in her hair while she clutched at his shoulders, both of them drowning in sensation. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Are you sure? He asked one more time, his forehead pressed against hers. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Adrian lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward his bedroom with a tenderness that made her heart ache. As he set her down gently beside his bed, Kendra felt a moment of nervousness crash over her. Adrian, I should tell you again. I've never— I know, sweetheart. His hands framed her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. We'll take this slow, I'll take care of you, I promise. The endearment, sweetheart, said in his deep voice, made something flutter in her chest. No one had ever called her that with such reverence. I love you, she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Adrian went perfectly still. What did you say? Panic flooded through her. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to— Say it again, he commanded softly, his eyes blazing with an emotion she couldn't name. I love you, she repeated, her voice stronger this time. God help me, he breathed. I love you too. And as he kissed her again, deeper this time, Kendra knew that whatever happened next would change her forever. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Adrian's bedroom, casting golden patterns across Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Kendra stirred slowly, her body deliciously sore in ways she'd never experienced before. The night had been everything and nothing like she'd imagined. Adrian had been patient, reverent, transforming what could have been awkward into something beautiful. He'd whispered her name like a prayer, held her like she was made of spun glass, and shown her depths of intimacy she'd never dreamed possible. Now, wrapped in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, she felt fundamentally changed. The scared girl from Atlanta was gone, replaced by a woman who finally understood what all the songs and stories had been about. Good morning, beautiful. Adrian's voice was husky with sleep, his hand stroking her hair. She lifted her head to meet his gaze, suddenly shy. Good morning. Any regrets? He asked softly, though she could see vulnerability hidden behind the casual question. None, she said, and meant it completely. You? His answer was a kiss that tasted like promises and forever. They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. Adrian told her about his childhood, cold boarding schools and colder parents who viewed affection as weakness. Kendra shared memories of summer evenings on her grandmother's porch, learning that love wasn't something to be earned, but freely given. We should probably get ready for work, Adrian said eventually, though he made no move to release her from his embrace. Probably, she agreed, tracing patterns on his bare chest. People are going to notice if we arrive together. Let them notice. The boldness of her own words surprised her. Adrian's eyebrows rose. That's quite a change from the woman who wanted to stay invisible. That woman didn't know what she was missing. Kendra propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him. I'm tired of hiding, Adrian. I'm tired of being afraid. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Are you sure? Dating me won't be easy. There will be scrutiny, gossip, people like Celeste who will try to tear you down. Then we'll face it together. Together, he repeated, as if testing the word. I like the sound of that. An hour later, they walked into Meridian Corporation side by side. Adrian had insisted on driving them both, claiming it was more efficient than taking separate cars. The truth was simpler. Neither of them was ready to be apart yet. The reaction was immediate. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as they passed. Heads turned. Whispers followed in their wake like a toxic perfume. Mr. Cole, the security guard at the front desk, stammered, clearly flustered. Good morning, sir. And Ms. Hayes. Good morning, Irving, Adrian replied smoothly, his hand finding the small of Kendra's back as they waited for the elevator. The ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. When the doors finally opened, they were greeted by a reception area full of wide eyes and barely concealed shock. Well, well, came a familiar voice dripping with false sweetness. Isn't this cozy? Celeste Fairmont stood near the reception desk, perfectly coiffed and radiating malicious satisfaction. She wore a red dress that hugged every curve and heels that could double as weapons. Miss Fairmont, Adrian's voice was arctic, I wasn't aware you had an appointment. I don't need an appointment to visit old friends. Her smile was razor-sharp. Though I see you've been quite busy making new ones. Kendra felt Adrian tense beside her, but before he could respond, she stepped forward. Is there something we can help you with, Miss Fairmont? Or are you just here to cause trouble? Celeste's eyes glittered with something dangerous. Oh, sweetie, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to prevent it. She turned her attention to Adrian. Have you told her yet? About your little arrangement with the Westbrook family? About the merger that's been in the works for months? Confusion flickered through Kendra, followed quickly by a cold dread. What arrangement? She asked, looking between them. Celeste, you need to leave now. Adrian's voice carried a warning that would have sent most people running, but Celeste wasn't most people. Oh, this is rich. You really haven't told her, have you? Her laugh was cruel. Adrian, darling, surely you remember the conversation with Harrison Westbrook, the one where you agreed that marrying his daughter Tabitha would seal the merger deal. The world seemed to tilt beneath Kendra's feet. What is she talking about? It's not what you think, Adrian said quickly, reaching for her hand. She stepped back, avoiding his touch. Then what is it? The merger talks have been ongoing for 6 months, Celeste continued, clearly enjoying every moment of devastation she was causing. A marriage between the Cole and Westbrook dynasties would create the largest financial empire on the East Coast. Adrian agreed to the arrangement weeks ago. Weeks ago, Kendra repeated numbly. Before you hired me. Kendra, let me explain. Did you agree to marry someone else? Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the reception area like a knife. Adrian's silence was answer enough. The hurt that crashed over her was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Worse than losing her parents, worse than her grandmother's death, because those had been tragedies beyond anyone's control. This was betrayal, pure and simple. You knew, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. You knew you were engaged to someone else when we... She couldn't finish the sentence. I'm not engaged, Adrian said desperately. It's a business arrangement. It means nothing. Nothing. Kendra's laugh was bitter. Marriage means nothing to you. Not that kind of marriage. Not a marriage without love. But you were willing to go through with it anyway. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. What was I, Adrian? Entertainment while you waited for your real life to begin? No, God no, Kendra, you have to believe me. Why should I believe anything you say? Tears she refused to shed burned behind her eyes. You've been lying to me from the beginning. I haven't lied. Lies of omission are still lies. She turned toward the elevator, desperate to escape before she broke down completely. Kendra, wait. Adrian caught her arm. Please, let me explain. She looked down at his hand on her arm, then back at his face. Explain what? That I was stupid enough to believe a fairy tale? That I actually thought someone like you could love someone like me? I do love you. No. She pulled free from his grip. You love the idea of me, the novelty, but when it comes time to choose between me and your business empire, we both know which one wins. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. As the doors opened, Kendra stepped inside and turned to face him one last time. "Goodbye, Adrian." As the doors closed between them, she saw something break in his expression, but it was too late now. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. 3 days of silence. Kendra sat in the building's cafeteria, mechanically stirring sugar into coffee she had no intention of drinking. Around her, the usual lunch crowd buzzed with conversation and laughter, but she felt like she was watching life through frosted glass, present but disconnected from everything. "You look like hell," Delilah said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear." "I'm serious, Kendra. When's the last time you slept? Or ate something more substantial than crackers?" Delilah's voice carried the professional concern of someone who'd seen too many people neglect their health during emotional crises. "I'm fine. You're the opposite of fine. You're existing on caffeine and stubbornness." Delilah leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Look, I don't know what happened between you and Mr. Cole, but there is no me and Mr. Cole." The words tasted like ash in Kendra's mouth. "There never was. That's not what my eyes told me when I saw you two together, and it's sure as hell not what his behavior the past 3 days has told anyone with functioning vision." Despite herself, Kendra looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean the man looks like he's been hit by a truck. He's been working 18-hour days, snapping at everyone, and yesterday I heard he fired his entire legal team over a missing comma in a contract." Delilah's expression softened. "That's not the behavior of a man who doesn't care. It doesn't matter if he cares." Kendra's voice cracked slightly. "He made his choice a long time ago." Before Delilah could respond, a commotion near the cafeteria entrance caught their attention. Kendra's heart sank as she recognized the voice cutting through the ambient noise. "Absolutely unacceptable. I specifically requested the quarterly reports be reformatted, and this is what I get." Adrian stood near the entrance, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, but his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. The junior executive he was addressing, a nervous-looking man named Fletcher, whom Kendra had met once, was practically trembling. "Sir, I followed the specifications exactly as—" "Then the specifications were wrong." Adrian's voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "Fix it, all of it, and have it on my desk by 5, or you can find employment elsewhere." Fletcher scurried away, clutching his files like a shield. Several other employees had stopped their conversations to stare, and Kendra could see the mixture of fear and confusion in their expressions. This wasn't the Adrian Cole they knew, demanding but fair. This was someone else entirely. Their eyes met across the crowded cafeteria, and for a moment everything else faded away. She saw pain in his expression, raw, unguarded pain that made her chest ache despite everything that had happened between them. Adrian took a step toward her, then stopped, seeming to remember where they were and who was watching. His professional mask slammed back into place, but not before she caught a glimpse of the man who had whispered her name in the darkness. He turned and strode out of the cafeteria without another word. "Jesus," Delilah breathed. "What the hell happened between you two?" The rest of the day passed in a blur of routine tasks and careful avoidance. Kendra had become an expert at timing her movements to avoid crossing paths with Adrian, but the tension in the office was palpable. Everyone could feel it. The storm brewing in the executive suite, the way conversations stopped when his name was mentioned. At 6 p.m., when most of the staff had gone home, Kendra was gathering her things when she heard familiar footsteps approaching her desk. "We need to talk." She didn't look up from her purse. "I don't think that's a good idea." "I don't care what you think is a good idea." Adrian's voice was rough with exhaustion and frustration. "I care about the fact that you won't even look at me anymore. Maybe that's for the best." "Is it?" He moved closer and she caught the scent of his cologne, the same scent that had surrounded her 3 nights ago when she thought she'd found her forever. "Because I can't sleep, Kendra. I can't eat. I can't focus on anything, because all I can think about is how I hurt you." Finally, she looked up and immediately regretted it. He looked devastated, like a man who'd lost everything that mattered. "You should have thought about that before you decided to keep your engagement a secret." "I'm not engaged." His voice was fierce, desperate. "I broke off the arrangement the morning after that night." Kendra's heart stuttered. "What?" "I called Harrison Westbrook at 6 a.m. and told him the deal was off. No merger, no marriage, no arrangement." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. "I chose you, Kendra. I chose us." "But Celeste said—" Celeste said what she wanted to be true. Yes, there were discussions about a merger. Yes, Harrison suggested that a marriage would strengthen the alliance, but I never agreed to it, not officially. His eyes burned into hers. And the moment I realized what you meant to me, I knew I never could. Hope bloomed in her chest before she could stop it. But why didn't you tell me about the conversations? Why let me find out that way? Adrian's shoulders sagged. Because I was afraid. Because I've spent so many years protecting myself from exactly this kind of vulnerability that I didn't know how to navigate it. I thought, if I could just handle the business side quietly, we could focus on us without complications. But I am the complication, Adrian, don't you see that? Tears she'd been holding back for days finally began to fall. I'm the secretary. She's a billionaire's daughter. In what world does that math work? In a world where love matters more than spreadsheets. Adrian stepped closer, close enough to touch her if he reached out. In a world where I'd rather have you than all the money Westbrook could bring to the table. And what happens in 5 years when you get tired of playing Pygmalion? What happens when the novelty wears off and you realize you've tied yourself to someone who doesn't belong in your world? You think this is about novelty? Adrian's voice cracked with something that sounded like anguish. Kendra, you are the first real thing that's happened to me in 20 years. You make me want to be better than I am. You make me want to build something meaningful instead of just profitable. Pretty words, she whispered, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. True words. He reached out then, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. I love you. Not the idea of you. Not the challenge you represent. You. The woman who catches million-dollar errors and quotes her grandmother's wisdom. The woman who isn't afraid to call me out when I'm being an ass. The woman who gave me the most precious gift anyone has ever given me. What gift? Trust. His voice broke on the word. You trusted me with your body, your heart, your innocence, and I betrayed that trust by not being completely honest with you. I will regret that for the rest of my life. Kendra closed her eyes, feeling the last of her defenses crumble. I don't know how to do this, Adrian. I don't know how to trust you again. Then let me show you. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away her tears. Let me prove that you're not a complication in my life. You're the solution to everything I never knew was broken. She opened her eyes to find him looking at her with such raw vulnerability that it took her breath away. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. Terrified, actually. Adrian's smile was shaky but genuine. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. As he leaned down to kiss her, Kendra realized that some bridges weren't completely burned after all. Some could be rebuilt, stronger than before. 2 weeks of carefully rebuilding what had been shattered. Kendra sat in Adrian's office, reviewing contracts while he finished a conference call with investors in Tokyo. They'd established new rules, complete transparency, no more secrets, and most importantly, no more hiding what they meant to each other. The office dynamic had shifted dramatically since their reconciliation. Adrian had made their relationship official with a company-wide email that was both professional and unmistakably clear. Kendra Hayes was no longer just his assistant. She was the woman he loved, and anyone who had a problem with that could find employment elsewhere. The reactions had been mixed. Some employees were supportive, others whispered behind closed doors, but most simply adjusted to the new reality. After all, Adrian Cole's happiness seemed to correlate directly with everyone else's job security. And I want those figures confirmed by end of business Wednesday. Thank you, gentlemen. Adrian ended the call and turned his attention to her, his expression softening immediately. How are the Morrison Medical Group contracts looking? Perfect, actually. Dr. Morrison, Delilah's boss, included a clause about employee wellness programs that could save us significant insurance costs. Kendra smiled. She's sharper than most of the lawyers I've worked with. Speaking of sharp, Adrian stood and moved to his window, but there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there moments before. We need to discuss something. Dread pooled in Kendra's stomach. What is it? Harrison Westbrook called this morning. He wants to meet. About the merger? About you. Adrian turned to face her, his expression carefully controlled. Word has gotten out about us, and he's not pleased that I chose love over business. Kendra set down her pen, her hands suddenly trembling. What did he say? Nothing I'm going to repeat to you. Adrian's voice carried a dangerous edge. But the gist was that he considers my decision a personal insult to his family. Maybe you should reconsider. Absolutely not. Adrian crossed the room in 3 quick strides, kneeling beside her chair. Kendra, look at me. There is no amount of money, no business deal, no social pressure that will make me choose anyone over you. Do you understand that? She nodded, but the fear remained. I just don't want to be the reason you lose everything you've built. You're not going to cost me anything. You're going to help me build something better. He took her hands in his. Which brings me to my next point. I want you to meet my mother. Kendra blinked. Your mother? I thought she was emotionally unavailable, cold, more interested in charity galas than her own son. Adrian's smile was rueful. All true, but she called yesterday. Apparently the rumors about my mysterious girlfriend have reached the Upper East Side social circuit. What did you tell her? The truth, that I'm in love with an extraordinary woman who happens to work for me, and that I don't care what anyone thinks about it. Adrian stood, pulling her up with him. She wants to meet you. This Saturday. Dinner at the plaza. Terror and excitement warred in Kendra's chest. Adrian, I don't know if I'm ready for... She's going to love you, he interrupted, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. How could she not? That evening, they worked late again, a pattern they'd fallen into not out of necessity, but because neither wanted to end their time together. Around 9 p.m., when the building had emptied except for security and cleaning staff, Adrian suggested they order dinner. Chinese or Italian? He asked, scrolling through delivery apps on his phone. Surprise me. Kendra was curled up on the leather couch in his office, reviewing personnel files. Just nothing too spicy. As Adrian placed their order, she found herself watching him, really watching him. The way he unconsciously loosened his tie when he relaxed, the way his voice grew softer when he spoke to her, the way he'd changed since that terrible morning 3 weeks ago. What? He asked, catching her staring. You're different now, happier. I have reason to be happy. He joined her on the couch, pulling her feet into his lap. For the first time in my adult life, I have something that can't be quantified on a balance sheet. What's that? A future I actually want to live. The words hit her like a physical blow, not because they hurt, but because they were so beautiful. Adrian, I need to tell you something else. His hand stilled on her ankles. I've been thinking about what you said about teaching, about how you gave up your dreams for financial security. It's fine. I made peace with that choice a long time ago. What if you didn't have to choose? What if you could have both security and your dreams? Kendra sat up straighter. What are you talking about? I've been looking into education programs. There's a literacy foundation that works with underprivileged kids in the outer boroughs. They need someone to head up their corporate partnerships, someone who understands both business and education. Adrian's eyes were bright with excitement. The salary would be competitive, and you'd be working directly with kids, helping them access better educational opportunities. Tears pricked at her eyes. You researched job opportunities for me. I researched ways to make you happy. There's a difference. Adrian shifted closer, taking her hands in his. I know it's not exactly teaching, but it would let you make a difference in kids' lives while still using your business skills. Why would you do that? Because watching you light up when you talk about children is one of my favorite things in the world. Because I want you to have everything you've ever wanted. His voice grew quiet, intense. Because I love you enough to want you to be fulfilled, even if it means you don't work for me anymore. The generosity of the gesture, the complete lack of selfishness overwhelmed her. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me help you build the life you actually want, not just the one you think you have to settle for. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, frowning at the unknown number. Some people don't know when they're beaten. Dinner at Chez Laurent tomorrow, 8 p.m. Come alone if you want to know the truth about Adrian's past. A friend. What is it? Adrian noticed her expression. Probably spam. She turned the phone face down, but unease settled in her stomach like a stone. Kendra. Adrian's voice carried that tone she'd learned, meant he wouldn't be easily deterred. What did it say? Reluctantly, she showed him the message. She watched his face transform as he read it. Confusion giving way to recognition, then to something that looked like dread. You know who this is, she said. I have an idea. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight with tension. And if I'm right, you absolutely cannot meet with them. Why not? Because some people will do anything to destroy what they can't have. As if summoned by his words, another text arrived. Ask him about Genevieve Sinclair. Ask him what really happened 5 years ago. The name hit Adrian like a physical blow. All color drained from his face, and for a moment he looked like a man staring into his own grave. Who is Genevieve Sinclair? Kendra asked quietly. Adrian closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, she saw a pain so deep it made her chest ache. She's the woman I destroyed, he whispered, and apparently someone thinks you should know about it. The rooftop of Meridian Tower had never been intended for romantic conversations, but at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, with the city sprawling endlessly below them, it felt like the only place in the world where Adrian could finally tell the truth. "Her name was Genevieve Sinclair," he began, his voice barely audible over the Manhattan wind. "I met her 7 years ago at a charity auction. She was beautiful, sophisticated, everything I thought I wanted in a partner." Kendra stood beside him at the railing, close enough to touch but giving him the space to speak. They'd been up here for 20 minutes, and he'd spent most of that time gathering courage. "We dated for 2 years. I thought I loved her, or at least, I thought I understood what love was supposed to feel like." Adrian's hands gripped the metal railing until his knuckles went white. "She moved in with me, started talking about marriage, children, our future together. What happened? I found out she was selling information to my competitors, financial data, client lists, merger plans, everything she could access through my personal files." His voice grew bitter. "She'd been doing it for months, maybe longer. Her lifestyle, her expensive tastes, it was all funded by betraying me." Kendra's sharp intake of breath was soft but audible. "Adrian, when I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She laughed. The memory still cut like glass. Said I was naive to think someone like her would actually love someone like me for anything other than money. That she'd been planning to leave once she'd extracted enough value from the relationship. That's horrible. It gets worse." Adrian turned to face her, needing to see her reaction to what came next. "I didn't just end the relationship, Kendra. I destroyed her. Systematically, methodically, completely." "What do you mean?" "I used every resource at my disposal to make sure she never worked in finance again. I had her investigated, her past relationships exposed, her professional reputation obliterated." His voice was flat, emotionless, recounting facts like a coroner's report. "I made sure that every door in New York, hell, every door on the East Coast was closed to her." Kendra was quiet for a long moment, processing. Did she deserve it? The question surprised him. Does anyone deserve that level of destruction? Someone who systematically betrayed your trust for profit? Someone who laughed when confronted with their treachery? Kendra's voice carried a strength he'd never heard before. "Maybe they do." "You don't understand," Adrian said desperately. "I didn't just ruin her career, I ruined her life. She had to move back to California, change her name, start over from nothing. And I felt satisfied, vindicated, like I'd won some kind of war. And now you think you're going to do the same thing to me?" The directness of her question hit him like a physical blow. "What? That's what this is really about, isn't it?" Kendra moved closer, her dark eyes blazing with an intensity that took his breath away. "You're not afraid of hurting me the way she hurt you. You're afraid of becoming the man who destroyed her if I ever betray you." Adrian started, then stopped, because she was right. She was absolutely right, and the truth of it was terrifying. "Adrian Cole," Kendra said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "I am not Genevieve Sinclair." "I know that. Do you? Really?" Her thumbs stroked his cheekbones, and he found himself leaning into the touch despite everything. "Because the man I fell in love with, the man who researched job opportunities just to make me happy, who cancelled a billion-dollar merger rather than lose me, who looks at me like I hung the moon, that man is not a destroyer. He's a protector." Tears he didn't know he was capable of shedding began to burn behind his eyes. "What if you're wrong? What if I am that man, and I just haven't shown you yet? Then I'll take that risk." Kendra's voice was steady, certain. "Because love without risk isn't love at all. It's just careful arrangement. And I didn't fall in love with a careful man, Adrian. I fell in love with a man brave enough to let his walls down for someone who might not deserve it." "You deserve everything," he whispered, his control finally cracking. "You deserve so much more than I know how to give. I deserve honesty. I deserve trust. I deserve a man who chooses me every single day, even when it's hard." Kendra rose on her toes, bringing her face closer to his. "Can you give me that?" "Yes." The word came out fierce, definitive. "Yes, I can give you that. Then give me one more thing. Anything. Give me your heart, completely. No more holding back, no more protecting yourself from possibilities that might never happen." Her voice grew soft, vulnerable. "Because I'm ready to give you mine. All of it. Forever." Adrian felt something inside his chest break open, not with pain, but with relief, like a dam bursting after years of holding back floodwaters. "I love you," he said, the words carrying the weight of every fear he was choosing to release. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love the way you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. I love that you make me want to be worthy of you. You already are worthy, Kendra whispered against his lips. You always were. The kiss that followed was different from any they'd shared before. It wasn't desperate or hungry or filled with uncertainty. It was a promise, deep, sure, and unbreakable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said suddenly, the words surprising even him. Kendra's eyes widened. "What? I know it's crazy. I know we haven't been together long enough, and I don't have a ring, and this is probably the worst proposal in the history of—" "Yes, our romantic gestures, and you deserve something beautiful and planned, and—" "What did you say?" "I said yes." Kendra's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll take your crazy, complicated heart and give you mine in return. Yes to all of it." Adrian stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she laughed, and the sound was pure joy. "I love you, Adrian Cole. Past, present, and future, all of it." He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed, the city lights blurring around them like fallen stars. When he set her down, both of them were grinning like teenagers. "We're going to have to tell people," Kendra said, suddenly practical, "starting with my mother." "Oh God." Her face went pale. "Your mother. The plaza. Saturday night." "She's going to love you," Adrian said with complete confidence. "And if she doesn't, I'll find us a new family. You can't just replace your mother. Watch me." Adrian pulled her close again, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "I told you, Kendra. I choose you. Over everything and everyone. I choose you." As if summoned by their happiness, Adrian's phone buzzed with another anonymous text. "Congratulations. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." This time, neither of them felt fear. Whatever games were being played, whatever shadows from the past were trying to intrude on their future, they would face it together. "Whoever sent that," Kendra said, reading over his shoulder, "they're too late. I already know the worst thing about you, and I'm still here. What's the worst thing about me?" "You snore." Her grin was impish. Loudly, Adrian's laugh echoed across the rooftop, carrying over the city that had brought them together. Below them, millions of people were living their own stories of love and loss, hope and heartbreak. But up here, surrounded by stars and possibility, only one story mattered, and it was just beginning. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their new apartment. Not Adrian's cold penthouse, but a warm brownstone in Brooklyn Heights that they'd chosen together. A place where Kendra's grandmother's Bible sat on the same shelf as Adrian's business awards, where mismatched furniture told the story of two lives becoming one. Kendra stood at the kitchen island, reviewing lesson plans for the Literacy Foundation while waiting for coffee to brew. The job had been everything Adrian promised and more, challenging, fulfilling, and perfectly suited to her skills. She'd started 3 weeks ago and already felt like she was making a real difference. "Good morning, beautiful." Adrian's voice was still rough with sleep as he wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to the curve of her neck. "Good morning, husband." The word still sent butterflies through her stomach, even after 2 months of marriage. They'd kept their promise to do things properly. The wedding had been small but perfect, held in the garden of a boutique hotel in the village, with Delilah as maid of honor, and Vincent proudly serving as Adrian's best man. Even Adrian's mother had attended, and while she'd initially been reserved, Kendra's genuine warmth had eventually won her over. "What's on your agenda today?" Adrian asked, stealing a sip of her coffee. "Site visit to the Riverside Elementary program, then a meeting with potential corporate sponsors." She leaned back against his chest, still amazed by how natural this felt, the easy intimacy of shared mornings and intertwined lives. "What about you?" "Board meeting at 10, lunch with the Nakamura group about the Tokyo expansion, and then—" He paused dramatically. "I'm leaving early." "Leaving early? Adrian Cole? Leaving work early on a Tuesday?" Kendra turned in his arms, eyebrows raised in mock surprise. "Should I be concerned?" "Very concerned," he said with a grin that made her heart skip. "I have important plans involving my wife, takeout from that Thai place she loves, and absolutely no discussion of quarterly projections." "Scandalous. I'm a changed man." His expression grew serious, tender. "You changed me, Kendra. Made me remember that life is meant to be lived, not just managed." She reached up to straighten his tie, a morning ritual that had become as natural as breathing. We changed each other. It was true. The shy, invisible girl from Atlanta was gone, replaced by a woman who spoke up in meetings, who wasn't afraid to challenge corporate executives when children's welfare was at stake, who'd learned that her voice mattered. And Adrian, the cold, calculating CEO, had discovered that vulnerability wasn't weakness but strength, that love multiplied rather than divided success. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said suddenly, his tone shifting to something that made her pay closer attention. "What is it?" "Harrison Westbrook called yesterday. He wants to discuss a new partnership, something about education initiatives for underprivileged youth." Kendra blinked. "The same Harrison Westbrook who called you an idiot for choosing love over profit?" "The very same." Adrian's smile was wicked. "Apparently, seeing how happy we are, and how much more successful I've become since I stopped trying to build an empire and started building a life, has made him reconsider his position on the value of emotional fulfillment." "What did you tell him?" "That any partnership would have to go through my wife since she's the expert on education programs." Adrian's eyes danced with mischief. He actually sputtered. "I don't think anyone's ever made Harrison Westbrook stutter before." Kendra laughed, the sound filling their sunny kitchen with joy. "You're terrible. I'm strategic, there's a difference." As if summoned by their happiness, both their phones buzzed simultaneously, a text from Delilah in their group chat. "Dinner at Romano's tonight? I have news that requires wine and immediate discussion." "Think she's finally going to ask out that radiologist she's been mooning over?" Adrian asked, typing back an acceptance. "Either that or she's decided to become a medical missionary in Tibet. With Delilah, you never know." The normalcy of it, the gentle teasing, the shared friendships, the comfortable routine of a Tuesday morning, still amazed Kendra sometimes. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, careful, protecting herself behind walls of silence. Now she was married to a man who'd moved heaven and earth to make her dreams come true, working a job she loved, surrounded by people who valued her voice. "I have to go," Adrian said reluctantly, glancing at his watch. "But tonight," she agreed, rising on her toes to kiss him goodbye. After he left, Kendra stood in their kitchen for a moment longer, listening to the sounds of the city waking up beyond their windows. Her phone buzzed with a message from one of her students, a 10-year-old named Jasmine, who'd been struggling with reading until Kendra had found the right combination of patience and encouragement to unlock her potential. "Mrs. Cole, I finished the whole chapter book. Can I pick out another one?" The message made her smile. Mrs. Cole. She was still getting used to the name, still thrilled by the life it represented. Her grandmother had been right about waiting for the right person. Some gifts were worth protecting until the perfect moment to share them. And when that moment came, when you found someone who saw your worth, who cherished your trust, who loved not just your strengths but your vulnerabilities, the wait became part of the blessing. Adrian had been worth waiting for, their love had been worth fighting for, and their future, stretching out ahead of them like an unwritten story, was worth every risk they'd taken to find each other. As she gathered her things for the day ahead, Kendra caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at her was confident, radiant, complete, no longer invisible but undeniably beautifully seen. And as the morning sun painted golden light across the walls of their home, she realized that some fairy tales didn't end with "once upon a time." The best ones began with "happily ever after" and kept writing new chapters every single day. What about you? Do you believe there are people worth breaking all your rules for? Kendra waited 25 years for the right love. Would you have that kind of patience? Or would your heart not be able to wait? Your participation in the channel is very important, so please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.